In the cold winter of 1513, a man sat in his modest study outside Florence, his once fine clothes now worn thin, his purse nearly empty. Niccolò Machiavelli had fallen from the heights of political influence to the depths of exile and poverty. Yet in this moment of apparent powerlessness, he was crafting ideas that would echo through centuries, demonstrating a fundamental truth: real power exists independent of material wealth or official position. The conventional understanding of power focuses on its external manifestations: money, titles, armies, influence over institutions. This perspective, while not entirely wrong, represents only the surface of a much deeper phenomenon. True power, as Machiavelli understood through his own experience of dramatic reversal, lies not in what you possess but in how you think, how you perceive opportunities, and how you respond to circumstances. When we examine history's most remarkable reversals of fortune, we find individuals who possessed something far more valuable than gold or armies. They understood the mechanics of power itself. They recognized that every situation, no matter how dire, contains within it the seeds of transformation. This is not mere optimism or positive thinking, it is a sophisticated understanding of how human affairs actually operate. Consider the nature of destitution itself. On the surface, it appears to be pure disadvantage, a complete absence of resources, influence, and options. Yet this apparent weakness contains hidden strengths that the wealthy and powerful often lack. The destitute person has nothing left to lose, which is perhaps the most liberating position of all. They are invisible to those in power, allowing them to move through society unnoticed and gather intelligence. They understand hardship in ways that those born to comfort never can, giving them insights into human nature and resilience. The wealthy man fears poverty above all else because he has built his identity around his possessions and position. The person who has already lost everything has passed through this fire and emerged on the other side. They have discovered that they can survive without the things others consider essential. This knowledge is itself a form of power, the power that comes from understanding that external circumstances, while important, are not determinative of one's essential capacity to think, plan, and act. Machiavelli's own life illustrates this principle perfectly. After his fall from grace, he could have despaired, viewing his exile as the end of his meaningful existence. Instead, he used his forced leisure to study, to think, to write. He transformed his banishment into an opportunity for deep reflection on the nature of power and politics. The work he produced during this period of apparent powerlessness, particularly The Prince, would prove more influential than anything he accomplished during his years in office. This transformation of weakness into strength requires a fundamental shift in perspective. Most people, when confronted with adversity, focus on what they have lost or what they lack. They measure themselves against others who seem more fortunate and conclude that they are powerless. This is a catastrophic error in thinking. It assumes that power is a zero-sum game, that there is only so much to go around, and that some people's advantages necessarily mean others' disadvantages. The reality is far more complex and encouraging. Power, properly understood, is not a finite resource but a renewable one. It can be created, cultivated, and expanded through knowledge, skill, and strategic thinking. The person who understands this can begin building power even from the most disadvantaged position. The first step in this process is to abandon the victim mentality that sees external circumstances as all determining. This does not mean ignoring real obstacles or pretending that disadvantages don't exist. Rather, it means recognizing that your response to circumstances is always within your control, and that this response can be the foundation for building power. When you are destitute, you are forced to become resourceful in ways that prosperity never demands. You learn to see opportunities that others miss, to make connections that others overlook, to find value in what others discard. These skills, developed out of necessity, become tremendously valuable assets. They represent a form of practical intelligence that cannot be bought or inherited. Moreover, the experience of destitution provides insights into human nature that are unavailable to those who have never experienced real want. You understand the motivations of the desperate, the psychology of survival, the bonds that form among those who share common struggles. This knowledge becomes a tool for understanding and influencing others. The key insight here is that power flows not from having resources but from understanding how resources can be acquired, deployed, and multiplied. The wealthy person who inherited their fortune may never learn these essential skills. They may be powerful in a narrow sense, able to buy what they want, to command others through economic incentive, but they lack the deeper understanding of power's true nature. The person who has built something from nothing, by contrast, understands power as a dynamic process rather than a static possession. They know how to identify and exploit opportunities. They understand the value of patience, timing, and strategic thinking. They have learned to read people and situations accurately because their survival has depended on it. This is why some of history's most powerful figures have emerged from humble beginnings. They understood that their initial disadvantage was actually a form of education, a forcing function that taught them skills and perspectives unavailable to those born to privilege. They learned to see the world as it really is rather than as they might wish it to be. The practical implication of this understanding is profound. You can begin building power immediately, regardless of your current circumstances. You do not need to wait for better conditions or external assistance. You need only to shift your perspective and begin thinking strategically about your situation. This process begins with taking inventory of what you actually have rather than focusing on what you lack. Even in destitution, you possess certain assets: your ability to think and plan, your capacity to observe and learn, your time and energy, your potential to form relationships with others. These may seem like meager resources compared to wealth or official position, but they are the fundamental building blocks from which all power is constructed. The next step is to begin using these resources strategically. This means studying your environment carefully, identifying opportunities and threats, understanding the motivations and weaknesses of others around you. It means developing skills and knowledge that will be valuable to others. It means building relationships based on mutual benefit rather than dependency. Most importantly, it means adopting a long-term perspective that sees your current situation as temporary and your efforts as investments in future power. The person who thinks this way begins to act differently. They become more observant, more strategic, more purposeful in their actions. They start to embody power even before they formally possess it. This transformation is not just psychological but practical. When you begin to think and act like someone with power, others begin to respond to you differently. They sense confidence and capability even when your external circumstances suggest weakness. This can open doors and create opportunities that seemed impossible before. The historical record is filled with examples of individuals who leveraged these principles to dramatic effect. From ancient times to the present, people have risen from obscurity and poverty to positions of great influence by understanding and applying these fundamental truths about power's nature. What distinguishes these successful individuals is not luck or special talent but their understanding of power as a skill that can be developed rather than a privilege that must be inherited. They recognized that every interaction, every relationship, every experience was an opportunity to build their capacity for influence and achievement. This understanding transforms even the most apparently disadvantageous situation into a laboratory for developing power. The unemployed person becomes a student of human nature and economic opportunity. The exile becomes an observer of political dynamics. The poor person becomes an expert in resourcefulness and efficiency. None of this is to romanticize poverty or suggest that material circumstances don't matter. They do matter, enormously. But they are not the final word on what is possible. Understanding the distinction between being temporarily disadvantaged and being permanently powerless is crucial to maintaining agency and hope in difficult circumstances. The person who grasps this distinction never truly feels powerless, even in the depths of destitution, because they understand that their current condition is not their permanent nature. They are always in the process of becoming something more, always building toward greater capability and influence. This perspective becomes a source of strength that no external force can take away. Part 2, The Mechanics of Building Power from Nothing. The transformation from powerlessness to influence follows certain predictable patterns that Machiavelli observed both in his historical studies and his personal experience. Understanding these patterns provides a roadmap for anyone seeking to build power from minimal resources. The foundation of this process lies in recognizing that power is fundamentally about relationships, the ability to influence others' actions and decisions in ways that serve your interests while providing them with value in return. This understanding immediately shifts focus from what you lack to what you can offer others and how you can position yourself as valuable to people who can help advance your goals. In Renaissance Italy, Machiavelli witnessed countless examples of individuals who rose from obscurity to prominence by mastering the art of strategic relationship building. These were not necessarily people of exceptional birth or inherited wealth, but individuals who understood how to make themselves indispensable to those with power, how to navigate complex social hierarchies, and how to gradually accumulate influence through careful positioning and patient cultivation of alliances. The first principle in this process is the cultivation of knowledge as the ultimate form of capital. When material resources are scarce or non-existent, information and understanding become the primary tools for creating value and building relationships. The person with superior knowledge of how systems work, who understands people's motivations and fears, who can see opportunities that others miss, possesses something of tremendous value even if their bank account is empty. This knowledge must be both broad and deep. Broad knowledge allows you to see connections and opportunities across different domains of human activity. Deep knowledge in specific areas makes you genuinely useful to others who need expertise they cannot provide themselves. The combination creates a foundation for influence that no amount of wealth can instantly replicate. The process of acquiring this knowledge need not wait for formal education or official credentials. The motivated individual can begin immediately, using whatever resources are available. Libraries, public institutions, the internet, conversations with knowledgeable people all provide pathways to understanding. The key is to approach this learning strategically, focusing on knowledge that will be practically useful in building relationships and creating opportunities. Particularly valuable is knowledge about human psychology and motivation. Understanding what drives people, what they fear, what they desire, how they make decisions, this insight becomes the basis for all successful relationship building. The person who can accurately read others and predict their responses has a significant advantage in any interaction, regardless of their formal position or wealth. Equally important is understanding how systems and institutions actually function, as opposed to how they're supposed to function. Every organization, every market, every social group has formal rules and informal realities. The informal realities, who really makes decisions, how things actually get done, what unspoken exchanges of value take place, represent opportunities for those who understand them. Once this knowledge foundation is established, the next step involves strategic positioning within existing systems and relationships. This requires patience and careful observation to identify where your emerging expertise and capabilities might be most valued by others. The principle here is to begin where you are, with what you have, rather than waiting for ideal conditions. If you're working a menial job, you can still observe how the business operates, understand its challenges and opportunities, and position yourself as someone with useful insights and capabilities. If you're unemployed but educated, you can volunteer your skills in ways that build relationships and demonstrate value while developing new capabilities. The key is to avoid the trap of waiting for permission or formal recognition before beginning to act with greater capability and influence. Power is not granted by others, it is created through demonstrated competence and value creation. The person who consistently provides useful insights, solves problems, and helps others achieve their goals will naturally begin to accumulate influence regardless of their formal position. This process requires what might be called strategic humility, the willingness to start small and build gradually rather than demanding immediate recognition of your potential. Many people sabotage themselves by believing that accepting lesser positions or working without immediate reward represents a compromise of their dignity. In reality, these early steps are investments in future power, opportunities to learn, demonstrate capability, and build the relationships that will eventually enable much greater achievement. Consider the pattern of how successful entrepreneurs often begin. They rarely start with massive resources or immediate access to powerful networks. Instead, they identify problems that others are experiencing, develop solutions using minimal resources, and gradually build credibility and relationships through delivering real value. Each satisfied customer or client becomes a reference for the next opportunity. Each successful project builds both reputation and practical experience. The same principle applies in any field. The aspiring politician begins by understanding local issues and building relationships within their community. The future business leader demonstrates competence in small-scale situations before taking on larger responsibilities. The emerging intellectual contributes useful ideas to existing conversations before attempting to reshape entire disciplines. This gradual approach serves multiple purposes. It allows you to learn and develop skills in lower stakes environments where mistakes are less costly. It builds a track record of success that others can observe and verify. It creates a network of relationships based on mutual value creation rather than superficial networking. Most importantly, it develops the practical judgment that comes only from real experience with responsibility and consequences. Throughout this process, timing becomes crucial. Power building is not just about capability and relationships but about understanding when to act, when to wait, when to push forward, and when to consolidate gains. The person building power from nothing cannot afford to waste opportunities through poor timing or premature action. This requires developing what Machiavelli called prudence, the ability to read situations accurately and respond appropriately. It means understanding when you have sufficient resources and relationships to attempt a larger move, and when patience is required for further development. It means recognizing which opportunities align with your growing capabilities and which would represent overreach. The cultivation of allies becomes particularly important during this phase. These are not necessarily people in positions of great power, but individuals whose interests align with yours and who can provide mutual support. The network of rising individuals often proves more valuable over time than attempting to curry favor with established elites who may view newcomers with suspicion or indifference. These relationships should be based on genuine mutual benefit rather than manipulation or exploitation. The person building sustainable power seeks to create value for others while advancing their own interests. This approach builds stronger, more durable alliances than strategies based purely on self-interest. The principle of reciprocity becomes central to this relationship building. When someone provides you with an opportunity, information, or support, finding ways to return value creates the foundation for ongoing collaboration. This might involve sharing your own insights, making useful introductions, or simply providing reliable support when others need it. As capabilities and relationships develop, opportunities for greater responsibility and influence will naturally emerge. The challenge at this stage is to recognize and seize these opportunities without overextending. Each new level of responsibility brings new challenges and requires new skills. The person who has built their foundation carefully will be better positioned to handle these challenges successfully. The transition from building power to exercising it requires particular care. Many people who successfully accumulate influence then squander it through poor judgment, overconfidence, or failure to continue the relationship building and value creation activities that brought them success in the first place. Sustainable power requires ongoing investment in capabilities, relationships, and reputation. The person who reaches a position of influence must continue learning, continue providing value to others, and continue building new relationships while maintaining existing ones. Power is not a destination but a dynamic process that requires constant attention and cultivation. The ultimate goal of this process is not merely to accumulate influence for its own sake but to develop the capability to shape outcomes in ways that serve both your interests and larger purposes. The person who understands power as responsibility rather than privilege is more likely to use it effectively and maintain it over time. This perspective transforms the entire enterprise from a self-centered pursuit of advantage into a broader understanding of how individual capability can serve collective good. The most enduring forms of power are those that create value for others while advancing the power holder's goals. Throughout history, the individuals who built the most sustainable and influential forms of power were those who understood this connection between personal advancement and broader value creation. They recognized that their individual success was linked to their ability to contribute to something larger than themselves. This understanding provides both practical guidance and moral grounding for the power-building process. It ensures that the capabilities and influence you develop serve purposes beyond mere self-interest, creating the foundation for both personal satisfaction and sustainable impact. Part 3, Transforming Adversity into Advantage. The final and most sophisticated aspect of never feeling powerless lies in the ability to transform apparent disadvantages into actual advantages. This represents the highest form of strategic thinking, the capacity to reframe adverse circumstances in ways that reveal hidden opportunities and create pathways to greater influence and achievement. Machiavelli's own career provides the perfect illustration of this principle. His exile from Florence, which initially appeared to destroy his political future, ultimately became the source of his greatest influence. Removed from the immediate pressures and distractions of office, he was able to think more clearly about the fundamental nature of politics and power. His forced distance from events allowed him to analyze them with greater objectivity. The hardships he endured gave him insights into human nature that his more comfortable years in government had not provided. This transformation did not happen automatically. It required a conscious choice to view his circumstances differently, to see his exile not as an ending but as an opportunity for a different kind of achievement. Rather than spending his time plotting his return to office or mourning his lost position, he channeled his energy into intellectual work that would prove far more enduring than any political appointment. The ability to make this kind of reframing represents a fundamental skill that can be applied to virtually any adverse circumstance. It begins with recognizing that every situation, no matter how negative it appears on the surface, contains within it certain unique advantages that are available nowhere else. Consider the specific advantages that often accompany what appear to be purely negative circumstances. Poverty, while undeniably difficult, forces the development of resourcefulness, efficiency, and creativity that prosperity can actually inhibit. The person who must survive on minimal resources becomes expert at identifying opportunities others miss, at making do with less, at finding value in what others discard. These skills, once developed, remain valuable even when circumstances improve. Failure, though painful, provides education that success cannot offer. The person who has failed understands the mechanics of failure in ways that can prevent future mistakes. They have learned humility and resilience. They often develop a more accurate assessment of their own capabilities and limitations. Most importantly, they lose the fear of failure that paralyzes many people who have never experienced significant setbacks. Rejection and exclusion, while personally painful, can provide clarity about where you actually stand and what you need to develop. Being excluded from certain groups or opportunities forces you to build alternative pathways and often reveals that the original goals were less valuable than they appeared. Many breakthrough innovations and movements have emerged from people who were rejected by existing institutions and forced to create something new. Even serious illness or disability, while presenting real challenges, can develop perspectives and capabilities that health alone cannot provide. The person who has confronted mortality often develops a clarity of priorities that enables more effective decision-making. Those who must work around physical limitations often become more creative and strategic in their approach to problems. The key to transforming these adversities into advantages lies in shifting from a passive to an active relationship with your circumstances. Instead of simply enduring hardship, you begin to ask what unique opportunities your situation provides and how you can leverage these opportunities for future benefit. This active approach requires developing what might be called strategic gratitude, not a naive appreciation for suffering itself, but a sophisticated recognition of how difficult experiences can contribute to your long-term development and effectiveness. This is not about pretending that hardship is pleasant, but about extracting maximum value from experiences you cannot avoid. The process begins with honest assessment of your current situation, including both the genuine disadvantages and the potential advantages. Most people in adverse circumstances focus exclusively on what they lack or what has gone wrong. While it's important to acknowledge real problems, it's equally important to identify the unique strengths, perspectives, and opportunities that your situation provides. For someone experiencing unemployment, the obvious disadvantages include financial stress and potential damage to self-esteem and professional reputation. But unemployment also provides time for learning, reflection, and strategic planning that employed people rarely have. It offers the opportunity to reassess career direction, develop new skills, and explore possibilities that would be impossible while maintaining a full-time job. It can force the development of resourcefulness and networking skills. It provides direct experience with job markets and hiring processes that can be valuable knowledge. The person who recognizes these potential advantages can begin to use their unemployment strategically rather than simply enduring it. They can invest time in learning skills that will make them more valuable to future employers. They can explore career directions that they never had time to consider while employed. They can build relationships and networks that will serve them throughout their career. They can develop consulting or freelance capabilities that provide alternative income sources. For someone facing financial hardship, the immediate focus is naturally on meeting basic needs and reducing stress. But financial pressure also provides powerful motivation for developing money-making skills and understanding financial systems in ways that comfort never requires. Many successful entrepreneurs trace their motivation to periods of financial desperation that forced them to become creative about generating income. The key insight is that necessity drives innovation in ways that choice alone cannot. When you must find a way to solve a problem, you often discover capabilities and possibilities that would remain hidden in more comfortable circumstances. The person who has learned to generate income without traditional employment often develops skills that serve them throughout their career. For someone experiencing social rejection or professional failure, the natural response is often shame and withdrawal. But these experiences can also provide valuable information about what approaches don't work, which relationships aren't worth maintaining, and what goals might not be worth pursuing. They can force the development of independence and self-reliance. They can lead to discovering communities and opportunities that were invisible while you were focused on mainstream acceptance. The transformation of adversity into advantage often requires patience and perspective that may only become clear over time. What appears to be purely negative in the short term may prove to have been essential preparation for future opportunities. The person who develops this longer-term view becomes more resilient in the face of immediate difficulties. This process also requires maintaining hope and agency even in difficult circumstances. The person who believes that their current situation is permanent and unchangeable will not look for opportunities or invest in future possibilities. The person who understands that circumstances are temporary and that their responses can influence outcomes will continue working toward improvement even in adverse conditions. Practical application of these principles requires developing specific habits and perspectives that support the transformation process. Regular reflection on what you're learning from your experiences helps identify insights and capabilities that might otherwise go unnoticed. Seeking out stories of others who have transformed similar adversities can provide both inspiration and practical guidance. Focusing on what you can control rather than what you cannot helps maintain agency and forward momentum. Perhaps most importantly, this approach requires developing a different relationship with time. Instead of seeing adverse circumstances as time lost or wasted, you begin to see them as investment periods, times when you're developing capabilities, perspectives, and resources that will serve you in the future. This reframing can transform the psychological experience of difficulty from one of pure suffering to one of purposeful development. The ultimate goal of this transformation is not just personal resilience but the development of genuine competitive advantages. The person who has learned to extract value from adverse circumstances possesses skills and perspectives that cannot be easily replicated by those who have not faced similar challenges. They understand aspects of human nature, motivation, and problem solving that are invisible to people who have only experienced comfort and success. These advantages compound over time. Each successfully transformed adversity builds confidence in your ability to handle future challenges. Each discovered opportunity in apparent disadvantage trains your mind to look for similar possibilities in new situations. Each development of capability through necessity creates tools that can be applied to broader challenges. The historical record confirms that many of the most influential and successful individuals throughout history have been those who learned to transform adversity into advantage. They were not necessarily people who faced fewer challenges than others, but people who became expert at extracting value from whatever circumstances they encountered. This expertise becomes a form of power that is independent of external conditions. The person who has mastered this skill never truly feels powerless because they know that any situation, no matter how adverse, contains within it the seeds of future advantage. They understand that their response to circumstances is always more important than the circumstances themselves. This perspective provides the ultimate foundation for sustainable power and influence. It creates resilience that cannot be broken by external forces. It develops capabilities that cannot be taken away. Most importantly, it transforms the entire experience of life from something that happens to you into something you actively shape through your choices and responses. When you truly understand and embody these principles, you discover that the question is never whether you have power, but only how you will choose to develop and exercise it. Even in the depths of destitution, even in the face of apparent defeat, the fundamental capacity for agency and influence remains intact. The challenge is learning to recognize it, cultivate it, and deploy it effectively. This recognition transforms not just individual circumstances but entire approaches to life and society. It suggests that human potential is far less constrained by external conditions than is commonly believed. It implies that the most important work of any individual is the development of these internal capabilities that enable the transformation of any circumstances into opportunities for greater achievement and influence. The person who masters these principles becomes not just personally powerful but a source of power for others. They demonstrate through their example that circumstances need not be destiny, that adversity can be transformed into advantage, that the human capacity for agency and achievement is far greater than most people imagine. In this way, individual transformation becomes a form of social contribution, proving what is possible for anyone willing to understand and apply these fundamental truths about the nature of power and human potential.